Hi, everyone, and welcome to a very special live event celebrating the new season of The Way Home on Hallmark Channel. I'm Brienne Heldman from People, and I'm so excited to be here with the two Elliots. This is a really special one. We didn't get to do this last season. So please welcome Evan Williams, the Elliott of the present day, and the Elliott of yore, David Webster.
Howdy.
I have to say, I feel like we're breaking the time-space continuum by having the two of you here together. Evan, we chatted last week, and you couldn't tell us much, but now that episode 1 is out there, that note you left Cat was like kind of brutal. What did you think when you saw what was in there?
Well, I mean, I think Elliot is doing his best, and at the end of season 1, when he tells Cat that he needs to go forward his own path, I think he sees in that moment how much it hurts her. He knows he's breaking her heart, and that breaks his heart, but it's still a choice that he had to make. He says in episode 1, like, if I knew that if I saw you, I wouldn't go. And I don't think Kat's ready to hear that. I don't think she cares. I think that she's hurt in that moment. And like when you love each other, like that makes the stakes very high. And so Elliot knows that he's hurt her. He's sort of was coming back expecting to be accepted like the prodigal son and has flown right into a hornet's nest. And so he's got a lot of work to do.
Absolutely. And David, what was it like for you coming back, getting to be in that first episode? It was exciting to see him. I was worried we weren't going to go back to 1999. We weren't going to get to see you again.
Well, truthfully, so was I. So I was very, I was very excited to see I was coming back. And then we got off to some really fun material right away, with Cat on the beach and everything. It was a good time.
I think one of the things that I found really interesting in this episode was the advice that Colton gave to Elliot.
Yeah.
And that was basically to seize the day and tell Cat how you feel. But he even shouted "Carpe diem." Do you feel like, for both of you, do you feel like Elliot has followed that advice? Or do you feel like for 20 years he's kind of skirted it?
I think for 20 years he didn't entirely understand what Colton was trying to say until it was too late. And then once he did realize, there wasn't much he could do about it. And I think that's something that Elliot tries to work on throughout that 20-year period, is being better at doing what he feels is right for him in the moment.
Yeah, and also, like, when somebody says seize the day, they're implying that you have agency, and Elliot's whole predicament is that he doesn't have agency. So it's a little bit like the algorithm doesn't compute, because he knows that he can't change anything. When somebody says seize the day, really he's like, well, the day has seized me.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what's exciting about season 2 as well, is because we know that at the end of season 1, the prophecy has reached its conclusion. And so now we get to see who is Elliot now that he is actually having the bandwidth to save the day, to seize the day, but realizing that he doesn't have much practice. He's not very good at it. And so he's a little clumsy. And we get to see beautifully in season 2, between David's performance and mine, you see so much interweaving. We learned so much about the interior life of Elliot. We knew so much about his outer structure, but now we really dive into him and we get to know more about his heart. And as we do, maybe Cat will too.
And it sounds like we're going to get to learn a lot about his relationship with his dad. What has that been like, getting to explore that storyline?
Well, originally I had heard about that around the end of the last season, and we had kind of been told like a brief outline of what our background was like. But it was really good. It gave a lot of context to why we are so attached to the Landrys in the way that we are, and how much of a support system they are for us. So I'm really excited for people to have a chance to maybe learn a little bit more about that as we go on.
Yeah, and I think it's really important with a character like Elliot. It's just as important what he doesn't say as what he does say. And so there's some pretty big gaps in our knowledge about Elliot. And so it's really revealing. And what's the word that I'm trying to think of? It's going to like rewarding. That's the word. It's going to be really rewarding for audiences to be able to fill in some of those gaps, because then all the puzzle pieces start to fall together. And we realize also with that conversation between young Elliot and Colton, this whole idea of their connection and what Colton means as a part of the Landry family to Elliot as part of the Augustine family. We dive into the origins of both of the families, and we get to see such a beautiful panorama of all these personalities and how they grow into the future.
As an actor, how has that experience been? Because you have now all this backstory that I assume you didn't really have in season 1.
Well, I have to create backstory in order to feel like I am comfortable. So what's really cool about working on a show where the writers are paying as close attention as they are is they're picking up the little things that we've been putting into our performances and writing those in. So as we are learning from the writers, they're also learning from us. And so the whole thing is sort of like a tango. And so like they have managed to meld the backstory that I came up with into the writing. And I'm sure they did the same with David as well. And so it all just becomes a party.
Is that something that the two of you talked about in season 1? What you think Elliot's backstory is?
Go ahead, Dave.
Well, we discussed a lot about kind of who he is and who the Landrys mean to him, obviously, and a little bit where I first heard some whisperings about my father was from Evan, because I think that was kind of, if I'm not mistaken, that was kind of your the backstory you came up with, and you kind of shared that with me, and I worked with that, and then the writers did the same as well. So a little bit, yeah, we did.
Yeah, and in season 1, at the beginning, it was really important for David and I to get clear with each other, mostly on mannerisms, because at the beginning of a story, you have to use embodiment to tell so much information about a character before they don't have the time to go and show a whole bunch of flashbacks and everything. So we had to give the audience a grounding in the character right away. And so it was very fascinating to get clear with each other on what has changed and what has stayed the same. And so we came up with a lot of mannerisms and things like that to connect the two performances.
Okay, what was that conversation? Was that conversation in person? I hope it was in person.
It was on Zoom.
No, it was on Zoom.
So you're like, I think he'd hold his finger like this. I think he'd hold his finger like this.
Yeah. Quite literally, that's how the conversation went, actually.
Yeah, and trying to find the psychological underpinnings of those things so they can tell a story. But it's cool because I've been watching now David's performance for a whole season, and now probably a season and a half. So I'm starting to learn so much about the minutia of what he's doing, and I'm sure he's learning about what I'm doing as well. So that's a cool thing about being an actor, is so much of that stuff can just go in your body, and it happens passively. Like our bodies are learning as we are watching each other's bodies.
Yeah.
Awesome. In the past, we did see this scene at the bonfire after the party, and Elliot didn't tell young Cat what he was feeling. And then, of course, we know she goes off to camp and she meets Brady.
I love that moment, David. It was so good.
Does that mean that Cat maybe isn't going to be able to rely as much on Elliot going forward? I mean, we know he's there for her, at least in the era when Alice is there, but.
I think so. And I think he could have played a larger role in her life and been that person for her, had he not kind of gotten in his own way. But yeah, I think Kat and Elliot will always have a really, really tight bond, even if they're not with each other physically. I think there will always be something there. They grew up with each other and they're best friends still. And so even if she's not there and she has Brady in her life, there will still be some part of her that needs Elliot, I think, always.
And there's also the question about, this prophecy, the whole time travel thing is a significant impediment. It's a huge obstacle, but there's also the extent to which maybe human beings sometimes use their obstacles as excuses. And so for Elliot, when that obstacle is then removed, maybe we realize that he was using it as a crutch a little bit, and so has to figure out how to walk on his own.
Interesting. So there's a lot of pressure on Elliot, David, to keep Cat secret over the years. Like, how does that weigh on Elliot, especially after we don't see Alice anymore, or after Cat doesn't see Alice anymore, I suppose I should say?
Well, I think originally it was just it was confusing to him, and he didn't want to do something wrong. He was walking a tightrope to not destroy the balance of the universe and uproot the space-time continuum.
No biggie.
Yeah. And so eventually, once Jacob disappears, even if he wanted to try to get it off his chest, because now that burden's kind of left on him in the past. He's the only one who knows about this. He can't, because things are already so difficult and confusing for the Landrys, and they just face tragedy after tragedy, and he can't really. He needs to be a rock and not the one getting things off his chest. And so it builds up for a very long time.
The longer you keep a secret, the heavier it gets.
Exactly.
Well, speaking of, I mean, we basically learned that Elliot still has more secrets from Cat. How does that weigh on him? Is he truly as free as he claims to be?
Is he as free as he wants to be?
Well, that too.
It's interesting. There's so much miscommunication between the characters in this show, and it's always riding the line between keeping information from somebody because you're trying to preserve them, but then also by doing that, endangering the relationship because there is untruth involved. And so it's an interesting philosophical question. Like, to what extent do we be transparent with the people we love, even if it may hurt them? And the answer is not always cut and clear. So Elliot, I think, he's trying to do his best, but he also has the potential to be more honest with himself, which would allow him to be more honest with the world around him.
Interesting. At least last season set up that the pond only takes who it can, and so that's why Elliot has not traveled in time. Is Elliot going to be jealous? Like, dang, there's a dog gets to go and I don't get to go?
Well, I mean, like young Elliot tried, right, David?
Yeah, I did. Well, I was jealous that I didn't get to jump in the pond as much as everybody else, because it was that was a good time. Then as winter came, I started to change my mind a little on that one. But
I feel like the ladies would try to talk you into how not so fun jumping in that pond is.
Yeah, misery loves company, I think. Yeah. And I would say that, like, Elliot is he's a science guy, right? He's a scientific mind, and we know that the pond itself as a time travel mechanism is unreliable. It says it sends you where you need to go. Sometimes you get to go, sometimes you don't. It seems like the pond is like a character of its own. So from a scientific perspective, it is entirely dangerous. You know, like you can't be controlled about the experiment. And so I think inevitably Elliot would resist that. And in fact, he's trying to get Cat and Alice all in season 1 to resist it because it's unreliable. You don't know what's going to happen, not only for them, and he loves them and he wants them to be safe, but also for time. Like, you can't mess around with these things. So I feel like Elliot would be pretty resistant.
Fair. Well, last season we learned a little bit about your process and how you thought Elliot was like a bird. Evan, you said Elliot was like a peregrine falcon. It was very specific. Is there a new animal that Elliot represents in season 2?
I think for me, like, using an animal is a great entry into a character, because as I was saying before about embodiment, it gets your body activated, but as the character continues to grow and fill out, I think the need to go outside for poetic metaphors like that is less necessary. And I think that the development in Elliot in season 2 is much more heart-centered. We see the character move more from a cerebral place down into the body as he is learning to truly discover who he is outside of this prophecy. So not so much an animal, but more we're moving to a different archetypical center.
David, how do you feel about that?
I agree.
Do you feel like you're in a different archetypical center?
Yes, yeah, I think so.
Actors will get it. We're nerds about this.
Yeah.
We get it.
Okay, so David, is there a scene either from season 1 or in this first episode that you watched and you were blown away by Evan's performance as Elliot and it informed you going forward?
Oh, absolutely. At the end of last season, when he said that he needed to take a step away and take time to live spontaneously himself without a prophesized future, I think that was really, really important, and I'm so happy that that was the way that the first season ended. And the way he sold that really helped inform those feelings building in myself leading up to that point to lay some foundation for that eventual realization he has. And just in general, a lot of what he was doing in the and some of the hurt I could feel he was carrying. I tried to take that with me and build like context behind it. And that was yeah, all the time, everything. That's a key moment, but constantly.
Aw. Evan, is there a moment that you watched David and you were like, wow, he's got it?
Well, honestly, like
you can't say every scene.
Yeah, no, I can't say everything you've seen, but when I see David do comedy, I'm always like, yes, David, like yes, because it's like we're building this character together. So I love the sort of like we're both kind of playing Elliot as a guy who is like one step behind, like he's ahead mentally, but he's sort of like he's catching up in so many other ways. And David does that so beautifully. And I won't give anything away, but continuing what David was saying, there's a lot that Elliot is carrying, and there's one particular scene in season 2 that I actually got to be there to witness David's performance, and I'm not going to give anything away, but it just blew me away. And like David is a fantastic actor, and it's a thrill to be able to see like the whole other side of this character, because anything he does informs what I'm going to do. So I was really proud of him that day. And David, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
And
Thank you,
I'm
Evan.
stoked for audiences to see it. It's cool to be collaborating on this guy.
Yeah. Thank you.
Before
Evan.
anyone loses their minds in the comments, he's allowed to be on set. It doesn't necessarily mean that they were in a scene together. Just to be clear.
Yeah. No, I was not in the scene. I was
yeah.
I was witnessing from behind the camera.
Okay. Well, speaking of a scene you were not in, but we have to talk about that crazy cliffhanger, because that final scene of the premiere is kind of insane. What was the reaction at the table read when you got to that point when Cat is shot?
Complete silence. Everybody was like, and I think we all looked at each other like, are we going to get away with this? Like, I think there was even once the cut of that episode was done, I think everyone was sort of like, whoa, like we are pushing Hallmark to expand beyond what people expect. And season 1, we kind of like we provided a proof of concept, and we proved that audiences are into it. Not only do they like it, but they are hungry for this kind of storytelling. They're into it. They're thrilled. And season 2, we don't let our foot off the gas. Like, this is just a sign of things to come. The Way Home continues to get wider and deeper and less expectable. So you got to pay attention, but it's going to be equally rewarding. Like, we're going to go there. You can see at the end of season 1, like at the end of episode 1, season 2, we go there, and we're going to keep going there. You don't even know where we're going to end up.
Well, without giving away too much, can you tease a scene to get excited for in the next couple episodes?
I think that people are going to be so stoked by our conclusion to this season. Every like what we've laid out throughout the whole season, the payoff, super unexpected, super rewarding, makes perfect sense. Incredible conclusion this season. Yeah. So I'm as stoked as honestly the entire audience is to see how it turns out.
I think the show did such a good job of linking the present day and 1999 in season 1, and you see sort of like there's so many refracting moments where things are they relate to each other and they inform each other. And so this season we see at the end of episode 1 there, Kyler, Cat Landry, is back in time, and this whole new rabbit hole is ahead of us that is going to be similarly thrilling and dangerous, and also reflect and refract with all of our other timelines. And so we have 1999, we have the present day, and we have a whole new timeline where we are going to have answers, and we're going to have new questions, and we're going to have all sorts of craziness, and I can't wait.
So if you, David, were going to jump into the pond and you could choose any period in time that you could visit, you get to go one time, what era of the universe do you want to see?
That is a crazy question. I'm gonna say about 10,000 years ago, ancient Egypt, like because that part is like so inconceivably far back compared to all of our the rest of our relative like known history, and things still remain from that period, and but there's not much known about it. Like most of what we know is like a lot of the Egyptian history is all stuff from like not even late Egypt, just in Egypt during other periods of time when people were there like researching stuff. Like I'm talking ancient Egypt, just to see what's going on there. See how are they making all of the incredible architectural advancements that they are in at such a time when the rest of the world is so primitive. That's my pond.
I love it. I'll join you in that.
Or Woodstock 94.
Wait, Woodstock 94?
Yeah.
Okay.
See 9 Inch Nails live.
Okay.
The good Woodstock, the real one.
Right, the real one. Evan, you're up.
Well, actually, David, kind of, I think we're on the same wavelength. I was going to say I'd like to go back to the Library of Alexandria. I'd like to go back to sort of like the period where Islamic culture was like crushing it, and mathematics was blooming, and there was like the technology that is now lost. I would love to just see the pinnacle of thought and literature at that time. I think it'd be gorgeous. But since David took that one, I will say I'd like to go 250 million years ago and ride a dinosaur. I want to ride a raptor. I want to be the first human to wrangle a raptor.
Fair enough. I imagine it's probably something like riding a dragon on Game of Thrones.
Yeah, it sounds easy.
Right? Easy enough. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. Thank you to everyone who tuned in. Everyone should be sure to tune in on Sundays on the Hallmark Channel for new episodes of The Way Home at 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central, and streaming the next day on Hallmark Movies Now. And you can tweet along or post along with us using the hashtag The Way Home.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.